Hi, I'm Mary Krueger, and I'm an attorney at New Hampshire Legal Assistance.
Hi, my name is Cathy Shanelaris. I'm a managing partner at a small firm in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we practice primarily family law. I'm sorry, the funding for this program is made available by the New Hampshire Law Library Pro Hac Vice Fund.
Thank you, Cathy. So today what we're doing is we're going to try to help you to understand how to request child support and the various forms that you're going to need in order to do that. And Cathy's going to talk a little bit about when you can request child support.
There are several cases in our New Hampshire legal system where you are entitled to ask for child support if you have children under the age of 18. The first case obviously is a divorce matter. So if you and your spouse are getting divorced, you can request child support to be paid in that kind of case. If you are not married and you have children under the age of 18, you can request child support in what we call a parenting case. The third type of case you can request child support in is if you are the victim of domestic violence and you are filing a domestic violence restraining order. And the last case that you can request child support in is what I'll call a freestanding child support case. Perhaps you just want to file a petition with the court to request child support. And again, if you have children under the age of 18, you can go ahead and file a child support case all on its own.
Typically, when you're the person who can request child support, you would have the children a majority of the time, or if your ex-spouse or partner has significantly more income, even if you have a shared parenting plan, you may be able to also request child support in certain cases like that. So what we're going to do is walk you through the main forms that you'll need to fill out ahead of time. The first one is the financial affidavit. The second one is a child support worksheet. And the third one is a uniform support order. These are the documents that you're going to want to fill out before you go to court and bring them with you when you get there and make copies for the court and for the other party. So I'll show you where you can find these forms. If you have access to the internet, you can go on to the New Hampshire Judicial Branch website, and that website is listed in a resource manual that you should also have along with this DVD that looks like this. If you go to that website, you'll want to go to the Circuit Court Home, down to the Family Division, and then go down to Forms. And when you get there, you'll see what kind of cases they have. The divorce and parenting case will have all the forms for both your domestic violence cases, divorce, or parenting. So the first one you want to look for is called a financial affidavit, and these are all in alphabetical order. So you'll see that right there, and you just click on it, and it should pull up. In some cases, you'll be able to fill it out right on the screen. In other cases, you might have to print it and do it by hand. So Cathy's going to talk a little bit about this form and how to fill that out.
Let me also say, if you don't have access to the internet or printing the forms is difficult, you could also obtain the forms at the crisis center. You could go directly to the courthouse, and they would also give you free copies of all these forms as well. In my opinion, the financial affidavit is the #1 important form that you want to fill out. That form creates a snapshot of your income and expenses for the court to look at. It's also really important if you're employed, if you could bring a copy of your most current paycheck stub to be put on the back of the financial affidavit. It's very helpful for the judge to see that as well. So I'd like us to take a look at the form, and I'm going to describe it in general. You can always take a look at it online and you'll see it in detail. But on the financial affidavit is actually 3 pages long. On the first page, towards the left-hand side top of the page, where we're indicating on the screen, this contains personal information, your name, your address. If it's a domestic violence case, you may leave that address blank and explain to the judge why you have left that blank. Otherwise, you should fill it out as completely as you can. To the right-hand side of the page contains your income information. And the financial affidavit is filled out with all the information being monthly. So you can either put your monthly income. If you are paid weekly, you should take your weekly income and multiply it by 4.33. Technically, that's how many weeks the court considers in a month, so you want to be able to have an accurate impression of your monthly income. I want Mary to talk a minute about if you have or are receiving some public assistance benefits, how you list those on the financial affidavit.
So if you see right up here on the right-hand side of the financial affidavit under paragraph 4, that's where most of your public benefits would be listed. So if you have cash assistance and food stamps, you want to add those two numbers together of the amount that you get per month and put that there. That's not going to be counted as income to you for purposes of calculating child support, but at least lets the court know that you have that assistance. Children's income may include if your child is getting SSI benefits, you would put that there. If you are receiving child support, you would currently put that there. You'll also want to put any SSI benefit that you get in other public assistance here. And again, that won't be counted as income for purposes of child support, but the court will need to know about it.
So in paragraph 5, where it says monthly income before taxes, it should be your gross monthly income. So don't subtract anything from it. Whatever your gross income is before your taxes are deducted should be listed. And again, as Mary said, when you at the bottom of that, where you total all your income, you do not want to include the information from section 4 above your public assistance benefits. That's not considered income. The bottom of page 1 contains a list of your assets. So if you have a home, you're going to list that. You're going to list if you have a mortgage payment on your home. You're going to list your bank account information, retirement accounts, whatever assets you have. The other thing I would say is if you run out of space and you feel like you don't have enough room to list everything, it is absolutely acceptable to attach a separate page to the financial affidavit to include everything. So I want us to take a look at the second page of the financial affidavit. And the second page really contains two pieces of information you need to fill out. On the left-hand side of the page, it talks about insurances, whether you have health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance. Those should be listed out. And on the right-hand side of the page where it says number 11, debts, that's where you want to list your debts, whether you owe a third person money, whether you have credit card debt, your mortgage payment, all of those things, those debts should be listed under that paragraph. The bottom of page 2, your financial affidavit needs to be signed before a notary or a justice of the peace. You can absolutely fill this out, or have it filled out, do not sign it, but when you go to the courthouse, ask the clerk's office to notarize the form for you, and they will do that for no charge.
There's a couple of other things that I'll just add to what Cathy has said about some of these sections. If you don't know how much you owe for a debt, but you know that you have the debt, you'll still need to list it there. Do your best to at least estimate what you think you owe, and then you'll want to write approximately next to it. So the court understands that you're not swearing under oath that that's the exact amount. Sometimes it can be useful to actually run a free credit report to look and see what debts you have, and that could be helpful to you as you progress through your case to find out that information so it's accurate.
Under paragraph 13, too, on that page, if you're going to attach a paycheck stub, you should check off that box. And the third page, what we're going to talk about next, deals with your monthly expenses. You should check off that box as well, that third page is attached. So the third page of the financial affidavit, also in my opinion, is one of the most difficult pages because it just requests so much information. People ask me frequently, do I need to bring all the backup information like my PS&H bill? Do I need to show the judge that? No, it's good enough for you to be able to just list your monthly expenses as detailed as you possibly can to the best of your knowledge and information on that form. And again, if you pay for food, for example, look at the very top right-hand side of the page. It talks about groceries. If you buy food weekly, you want to take an average of what you pay for food, multiply it by 4.33 weeks in a month, and put your monthly amount of your expense on there. Same goes for all the other expenses. If you have a checking account, I think I normally suggest what's helpful is to go through your checking account and look at all the expenses you pay. For example, if you pay for your life insurance policy only once a year, you want to take that expense, divide it by 12, and make sure it's on your financial affidavit. It's a very time-consuming form, but you really want to take your time to do it because it's important for the judge to see your expenses. In particular, on that form, under paragraph 7, deals with the children's expenses. So daycare costs are very important for you to list on there. If you pay tuition for your kids, if there's school supplies, diapers, it lists out. And again, if you don't feel that this form gives you enough space, it's okay to attach a page to the back of the financial affidavit to list out all of your monthly expenses.
And just another couple tips on trying to figure this out, because it can be difficult. Some of these expenses don't occur on a monthly basis. Like Cathy mentioned, they might be weekly. They might be only 6 months of the year where you're paying for your heating oil. So you want to average out the amount that you've spent over the winter on a 12-month basis to what you would, on average, be paying for something like heating oil. Also, gas for your car. Sometimes you may need to think about, geez, I only throw $10 in every couple of days, and really try to figure that out and sit down and calculate it on a monthly basis. So it can be a little challenging to do, and it will take you some time, but if you try to think about it in those small little steps, you'll be able to figure it out. Just to add, with some of these expenses like daycare, for instance, that, if you're paying for it, will get counted in the calculation for child support. So you really want to make sure that you have that number down there, and that you go back up to the first page and put that number down under the monthly expense section of the right-hand side under number 6, so that that daycare expense is accurately reflected when the court looks at your documents.
And you know, and Mary raises a question that a lot of my clients have is, well, what if I pay for daycare differently during the school year than I do for the summertime? And so, as Mary said, you want to think about the cost for the summer, the cost for the school year, and average them out for the entire year to bring you to a monthly amount to put on your financial affidavit. The other thing that's attached to the financial affidavit are a couple pages of instructions. So it's helpful to look at those instructions before you begin completing the financial affidavit, because it will give you some guidance as to how to do the things that Mary and I are describing to you. But the more accurate you can be on this form, the better it is for you when you get to court.
And the reason why we put this one first is you really should work on this one first, because that'll help you fill out the other forms that we're going to talk about. And I'll bring you to the next form that we're going to talk about, which is called the Child Support Worksheet. Before we get to the actual worksheet itself, I'm going to show you a tool that will be really helpful in you to figure out how to fill out the Child Support Guidelines Worksheet. This can be found at the Department of Health and Human Services website, and it's, if you look for the tools, you can find the child support calculator. It's pretty easy to find, but it will also be in the resource manual if you need to look up that web address. And what you want to do is take your financial affidavit and use that to help you fill out this calculator. And I don't know, Cathy, you want to say anything about this?
Sure. Child support in New Hampshire is based on a formula, and that formula compiles information from several places. So, for example, to calculate child support in New Hampshire, what the court looks at is they look at your income and your spouse or your significant other's income. They also look at certain pieces of information that you get credit for or a deduction for, which Mary's going to go through on the form. So child support is based on a formula that looks at not only your income, but the number of children you have, and the guideline calculation comes up with an amount that the court presumes is the correct amount of child support. So it's really important for you to complete your financial affidavit to be able to have that information in order to use the form. And we'll talk about, after Mary goes through the form, about what might happen if you need to estimate your spouse or your significant other's income. Mm-hmm.
So this little tool here, the first thing that you see is a little drop-down box, and it only goes up to 4 because if you have more than 4 children, the calculation for child support stays the same. So you would put in how many children you have. So we'll just do an example for 2. And then your income, so we'll just come up with a figure of $2,000 a month, and that again is the gross income that you've listed in section 5 of the financial affidavit. And then the other party's income goes here. The other party who's going to be paying is called the obligor, and you as the recipient will be the obligee. So if you don't know the monthly income for your spouse, ex-spouse, or partner, then you'll want to just try to come up with what you reasonably think that person, based on your experience, is making on a gross monthly income. So we'll just come up with a figure of $4,000, just to keep it simple. Then you just hit submit, and now it's going to print out for you the amounts of child support based on the formula that Cathy described, so you don't have to do the math. And it'll give you the monthly amount, the weekly amount, or the bi-weekly amount. And usually what I advise people is you should go with what you think your partner or ex-partner is getting, paid. If they're getting paid weekly, then you would choose the weekly amount, and so on. That will also give you a figure called the reasonable medical support obligation, which don't worry yourself too much about that, but just take note that those figures are there for both the obligor, the person who pays, and the obligee, who is you. And we'll tell you where to put those in. Now, if you hit View Worksheet, you'll be able to actually see the child support worksheet all filled out. And this worksheet is what you will want to fill out, and you'll just basically fill it out the way it appears on the page here. You can't print this out because the website doesn't function that way, but you'll see where all the figures are and what you need to put in the various boxes. And don't worry too much about trying to understand or figure out these numbers. The most important number that you'll want to have is the figure in paragraph 15, which is the total amount of child support. And again, you can choose to write it on a weekly basis, bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, or monthly. And we'll just go back up here to show you that this is the number of children, and those $2 amounts that came up, the reasonable medical support obligation, are right here for when you need to fill those out. But don't worry too much about those. And I'll go back just to show you that. Go back twice. Here you can find a printable blank worksheet. So this you can print out and then fill in. So you might want to print it out first, go back to the calculator, fill in your numbers, and then you can write everything down on this page and have that ready to go. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that?
I just want to say that I know some of these forms might seem a little daunting, but the court will be not only really impressed that you filled them out, but it is likely that your partner or your spouse will not have filled them out. And if the court has the guidance from you to see the forms completed and submitted, that the court is very likely to use your form and to give you what you want. So that's why it's really important for you to have these forms ready to go, because it's very helpful to you in getting what you want ordered from the court.
So I am going to bring back up for you the worksheet that's completed on the calculator, so we can refer back to that as we fill out the next form that you need to do, which is the uniform support order. And that can be found again on the Judicial Branch website, and then back to that page with all the lists of forms for divorce and parenting cases. And in alphabetical order, you'll find the uniform support order. And I'll let Cathy start off with describing that right here.
So the uniform support order is the actual form that the court will use to make an order for the amount of child support. You've done all this work on the calculation, and you're going to fill out this form so that the judge can sign this form, and it will become the order for your calculation. So we're going to look at the form again, and at the top of the form, again, is, as Mary described, the person who is going to pay the support is called the obligor, and you're going to fill out as much information as you can about that person, your spouse or your partner. And on the right-hand side of the page is going to be your own information. If you do not know certain pieces of information, for example, the name of their employer or their email address, just leave them blank. It's perfectly fine to leave the form blank and just fill out as much as you can. The first section, in the next section, lists your children's names and their date of birth. And again, if it's a domestic violence case, you want to leave your address off the form. Do not complete it. Because you're not required to complete that. But you want to have your kids' names and their date of birth. The next section, section 1 talks about, well, what kind of hearing is this? And, is it a final hearing or a temporary hearing? Honestly, you could leave that blank if you're not sure. You don't have to worry about filling that out. There are really 3 things that Mary and I are going to talk to you about that are very important for you to fill out on this form. That's not one of them. The first section that's very important for you to fill out is paragraph 4, and it talks about the amount of child support. So, as Mary talked about the child support guideline worksheet calculation, the amount of support that you calculated is going to go in paragraph 4.1. You're going to put the amount of support, whatever it is, $900 per month. You're going to put in $200 per week. Whatever the calculation came out to, as your spouse or significant other is paid, if they're paid on a weekly basis, you really want to put it weekly. If they're paid on a monthly basis, you want to put it monthly. Or every 2 weeks, you're going to put it biweekly. The next section that's really important for you to fill out is where it says payments on the ordered amounts. When's that going to begin? Although there are some technical rules that talk about you could get it paid earlier, you could just say immediately, forthwith. You could put the date of the hearing, would be perfectly acceptable for that piece of information. And again, paragraph 6 talks about, well, are you complying with the guidelines? Is the judge going to order less than the guidelines? That is a paragraph you could skip and leave blank if you didn't feel comfortable filling that out. All you're letting the court know in that paragraph is whether what you're asking for is the guideline amount. If it is, if you are asking for the guideline amount, you just want to check off the first box under that paragraph to say you're asking for the guideline amount.
And I'll just jump in to go back to paragraph 5. After you figure out when to start the child support, you would also want to check off which box of how it's going to get paid. And so you can get it paid directly from your spouse, ex-spouse, ex-partner, partner, or you can have it payable through the Division of Child Support Services. The advantage to having it payable through the division is that the division will track the payments. It will be able to automatically attach the person who's paying paycheck, and that money will go straight to you or to a bank account that you set up. And also, it will track when it goes unpaid, and so you'll know how much has not been paid. There is a small fee for that, it's like $25 a year. And you also, if you get the order, will need to go to the division with your order to make sure you fill out your paperwork so that they know that they are supposed to be tracking the child support and collecting it for you. So that's a real good service that you might want to take advantage.
I think the next paragraph that we really want to scoot down to is talking about uninsured medical expenses. So what that means is if you or your significant other have health insurance and dental insurance, sometimes the insurance doesn't pay for everything. Or in the event that nobody has any insurance and the kids are not covered by insurance, all those things need to be paid for somehow. So the really important paragraph that you really want to make sure you also deal with is paragraph 17. That talks about how are the children's uncovered medical and dental expenses going to be paid. Typically, the default position is 50-50, meaning that each of you would be responsible for paying for co-pays or anything not covered by insurance, or if you're on the state plan for insurance for your kids, if there's anything not covered by insurance. The court considers that to be outside of child support. So in addition to child support, you may receive reimbursement from the other parent for any of those expenses. If there's a significant difference in your income, sometimes you could put that the obligor will pay 100% of those expenses and you'll pay 0. You could pick any percentage in between. As I said, the default position is you will each pay those 50-50. But if you want to put another percentage in there, perhaps that your spouse pays 70% and you pay 30%, you can also suggest that. But it's good not to leave that blank, because that could be a lot of money that you could also receive in addition to child support, especially if you have a child that frequents the doctor or has a medical condition where there are a lot of medical expenses.
So just to recap this form, there are a lot of boxes to check off and a lot of paragraphs. You really don't need to worry about having everything complete, especially if you don't understand it. The court is going to be satisfied if you, one, have a form that you're presenting, and if you can reasonably estimate what the child support should be under paragraph 4 to fill that in, under paragraph 5 when you want it to start and how you want it to be paid, and then paragraph 17 which talks about the medical expenses and how those are going to be shared. And if you get that far, the judge is going to be pretty happy. So this, like Cathy said, is the actual proposed order that the court would sign if it adopts it, and there's signature page for you. You don't have to sign that under oath. And then if you are interested in looking, like the financial affidavit has all the instructions, the uniform support order has all of this information called standing orders that would be enforceable also when the court signs this document. So you can read through that just for your own education to see what this order allows for. So those are all the forms that we need to go through. We had the financial affidavit, we had the child support worksheet and the uniform support order, and you do your best to fill those all out and bring them to court for your hearing, and make copies for the other party and make copies for the court. And you can certainly refer to the handbook that is with this DVD, so you can look through and get more information about where the resources are. When you go to court, depending on your hearing, every court is different, every hearing is a little different. You can certainly go to the clerk window when you get there and ask if you can submit your documents ahead of time, because sometimes the clerk will take it and give it to the judge so the judge can look at it before actually holding the hearing and will know that you're asking for child support. Other times, especially in domestic violence restraining order cases, things are happening pretty quickly. So you might just be told to just bring it in to the hearing with you. But don't be shy. Make sure when you get into that hearing, you ask the bailiff to give it to the judge, or during the hearing, you let the judge know that you have this paperwork and you're requesting child support.
So just to reiterate, finding the forms, again, we refer you to the handbook where you can see some samples of the forms. It also gives you references to the websites that we've been using today. And again, you could go to the Crisis Center to get the forms, or you could also actually go to the court itself and ask for the forms. But you will be really ahead of the game if you complete these forms to the best you can and bring them with you to court, because it will really help you get the child support order that you both want and need for your children.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.